What up, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of Be Real. As you guys know, I am super excited about today's guest because not only does he edit our podcast now, but he also had like everybody I bring on, he has a real story. And it's one that it sucks in one regard because your life gets flipped upside down. It's like the Will Smith song. My life got flipped upside down on my and I said, I'm moving to Beverly Hills or something. I'm pretty sure that's exactly how the song goes. Woke up one morning. Oh, who knows? You're gonna have to edit that all out. But Jason's got a cool story. He's a cool dude, and he's a solopreneur, entrepreneur that's working on his business. But because he was doing something outside of his job, it gave him options. And, I think that's really important to talk about because a lot of people are stuck, Jason, right? Like a lot of people are stuck. But before we get into that, welcome to Be Real, man. Thank you it's been a little bit of a scheduling conundrum, but I'm super excited to have you here. Welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself, bro.
Yeah, it's so cool to be here with Will Smith. I didn't think he was going to be making an appearance, but that was a great attempt at the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme. Good job, my friend.
I'm going to get the words at some point. He actually was test driving my bike because he saw it on Instagram and he saw me flying on it. So for those of you that are listening to the podcast, you got to go check out the YouTube because I got my bike now behind me and it looks sexy, doesn't it?
It does. That's a good backdrop.
Yeah. Will
Fit you perfectly. It's perfect for you.
Well, that's why it's there. It's all staged, baby. The world is staged.
That's right.
So tell us about Jason, tell us about Jason, man. And what you got going on and how you live your life at like a level 9. You said you live your life at like a level 9
positive mindset. That's the only way to live. Yeah. I'm Jason Cercone. I'm an entrepreneur. I guess I don't tend to grab hold of that serial entrepreneurial label. I don't know if that fits me, but at the same time, I've been doing my own thing off and on since I was 13 years old. Started out with a small little baseball card business. I would take my collection and sell it at the mall and then take that and buy more inventory and turn around and sell it and keep going on. And then when I look back on it, what sucks is I ended with buying more inventory because now I've got all these sports cards that are sitting in my closet that don't have the value they had back then. I would have sold them back then and then walked away. I would have had a nice pile of cash, but I was like, oh yeah, 30 years from now, these are going to be great. Well, it's almost 30 years from now and it's not so great.
Now you need I think is it Pokemon cards that are selling for like a ridiculous amount of money?
I'm not sure. I know sports cards have made a little bit of a resurgence. I still see people out collecting them, but what I had heard about the time frame that I was collecting them in the 80s and 90s, there were so many of them, they're not rare. I'm like, all right, well, I'm waiting for the right guy to say, I'll give you a bunch of money for it. And I'll say, yep, here you go, man.
We did take baseball cards of people that we thought were never going to amount to anything. We put them in the spokes of our tires. We could have potentially lit them on fire and threw them across the backyard as flaming little ninja stars or whatever. I'm not going to say these things happened or didn't happen, but a lot of baseball cards have definitely disappeared over the years.
That was, I never did the flipping thing. And I mean, like the actual, like my dad told me about games where they would flip a card and that you'd have to call it, whether it end up face up or the stats. And then that's how you would win the cards, but it would damage the hell out of the corners. And like, so any card that I inherited from him was all beat up, but me and my friends would play poker as if the cards were currency. So it was like, here, I'll raise you this Ken Griffey Jr. rookie. And then whoever won the poker hand would take all the cards. So,
I like that.
I won a lot of money, or not a lot of money. I won a lot of my card collection playing poker because I'm pretty good at cards and my friends aren't. So I was able to take their collections. But yeah, that was where it all got started for me. And then I've been doing different businesses off and on as I got older. And currently what I'm doing is podcast marketing and consulting. As you mentioned, I'm helping you edit your show, Vikram. I'm helping others do the same. I work with some people to help them get booked on podcasts so they can really build their brand and their presence by making a guest appearance on shows that are relevant to their message. And I always felt like this is where I was going to go. And I know we're going to probably get into this, but the last company I worked for, I had it all worked out in my head that I was going to leave the right way. I had the right exit story in my head of,
well, let's talk about that a little bit.
Let's do it.
Of what actually happened. So
yeah, sure.
So like many entrepreneurs, you started young. Maybe you're not a serial entrepreneur, but you had the entrepreneurial gene inside of you
There you go. Yes.
where you wanted to figure out how to make money and have different streams or different ways. Right. You know,
Correct.
like my older brother and I, he says it's his card collection, and he's stronger than me, so it's probably his card collection. But we had the Tony Gwynn. He had
Yeah.
like 16 cards, and I think we have like 15 of them. And you know, we did the same thing. My mom would get so irritated. She's like, I'm not taking you guys to the card store. I'm not taking it. But that entrepreneurial gene is in you. And did you grow up in a house with entrepreneurs?
No, I mean, I will say I grew up in a house with parents that worked their ass off.
Okay.
They didn't work for themselves, but they were very dedicated to their jobs, and they performed their jobs to the best of their abilities because they knew they were planning for the future. I've been able to have talks with my dad about this. He retired early.
Okay.
He's living a great life. You know, my mom unfortunately had a stroke back in 2010, so that altered their plans to some degree. She's still with us, but it's not the same as what they had building for. But they go down to Florida for a few months out of the year to start off every year. You know, they get out of the cold Pennsylvania winters. And I think in that respect, at least, yeah, absolutely. And some of the things that they wanted to do, they have been able to do, which is awesome. But I learned very strong work ethic from day one, and they never accepted any excuses or any bullshit. It was, you get off your ass and you do your job. I remember, and this is one of the most vivid memories I have. One day when I was probably, I'd say probably 12, 13 in that time frame, I was helping my uncle mow lawns at this local baseball field.
Yep.
And one morning I just didn't feel like going, and I didn't get up, and I didn't go. And I remember I was in the middle of this dream where I was playing football. And as like the linebacker was closing in on me to tackle me, as I got hit, it was my dad kicking my bed as hard as he could. Why are you still in bed? Why didn't you get up and go to work today? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, and then he just laid into me. And that stuck with me. I mean, because that story still is like it happened yesterday. And it just makes me remember that you can't lay around and expect good things to happen. You got to get up and go to work. You got to do your thing. And this is the type of thing I instill in my daughter. I've never had to kick her bed, fortunately it's never come to that.
Well, I see the picture in the background where, I see the picture in the background. So hopefully you're not kicking her bed, because she looks like she's a cute little 4, 5, 6-year-old. And
well, she's 11 and a half now. Okay. She's actually first day of 6th grade as we sit and record today. But no, but I will say, what I noticed in her last year, school was remote for her. She didn't go to school at all because of COVID, and she had to do everything online. It wasn't ideal, but she adapted to it so well.
Nice.
And I think she learned so much in regards to accountability, making sure she was on time for class and present in that environment and still doing what she had to do.
Yep.
And she never missed a day of school. She just did her thing and made it work. And I was so proud of her for having just that self-reliance. And I tested her a lot to just make sure she could do it without any guidance. And she pulled it off and did it great. So I know she's happy to be back with her friends, but I think she learned a lot in that, non-ideal world of COVID last year.
We are social creatures, and we need socialization. We don't need socialism, but we need socialization to allow us to, they say it takes a village, and it really does take a village, right? You got to see what other people are doing and not doing, and how they're behaving and misbehaving for you to really understand what life is like. I mean, I remember there's when you talk about like your dad and his work ethic, there's 3 things that really stand out to me when I think about work ethic. One was when I was young, 7 to 10, 11, 12. My grandparents are farmers. They still, my grandpa's not with us physically, but he's always with me spiritually. And the levee on the farm broke. This is when they were doing the old school where they would, build little basic mounds, and then they would flood the trees for, however long they could, there's a lot more water in California. So they would flood the trees, and that was their irrigation. Well, if the mound broke, if the levee broke, the water would flood out and the trees wouldn't have the same crop because once you're full of water, you can't keep filling that back up. That was the right. So you got to go back and, backfill the dirt and then do all the stuff. But you also got like 2 million cubic feet of water rushing out at the same time. So you're packing in mud as fast as it's going out, or it's going out faster. And I remember my grandpa, we would sleep, they had a 3-bed, 2-bath house, 3-bed, 3-bath house, but there was like 7 kids.
Wow.
And so, so grandpa would fall asleep at 8:00 because he wakes up at 3-4 in the morning.
Right.
And so he'd have his couple cocktails and then he'd fall asleep and then he'd go to his bedroom. And then grandkids and aunts and uncles and whoever was the youngest got thrown out into the living room and we got to camp out and we loved it. So one day all the kids are sleeping and I hear some shuffling. I was a light sleeper. I look up and grandpa's walking out and I said, it's awfully early. And he's got his water and he's got the bathroom and he doesn't need to come out of his room. So what the heck's going on? Oh, wait, he's dressed too, because it was shuffling in the room for a hot minute. And the levee broke. And I said, Gramps, where are you going? Ah, goddamn levee broke. Because all the moms are sleeping. He can curse. Goddamn levee broke. And the workers, he used different terms back then, but he was talking about the workers and they don't ever show up on time. So I'm going to go fix the goddamn levee. Okay. Can I go with you? Huh? Can I go with you? Yeah, hurry up. Go get your shoes and socks and let's go. Oh, okay. I don't know what I was doing. I just want to be with grandpa. Grandpa's going out on the farm. I'm going to go out on the farm. He grabbed 2 shovels and my first callus I ever got was from filling the levee with grandpa, who was, 5-7 years from passing. Late at night, middle of the morning, I don't know, 1-2 o'clock in the morning. And then once we stop the water, of course, the workers show up. And I said, why didn't you just wait? He said, that's my farm. That's my money. That's what feeds you. When you guys want to go to the candy store, when you guys want to go play in the trucks, when you guys want to go get the 3-wheelers and you guys want to do this and that's your money. That's your farm. You take care of it. Nobody else will. And then my dad, one day we had a pizza place. Both of these stories actually have to do with poop. We had a pizza place. Toilets overflowing because somebody lodged a big one down there. There's puke everywhere. Friday night, he goes and cleans it all up. He's a doctor. And I was like, Dad, I could have done that. He's like, you're faster than I am on everything else. So you stay where you're at. I'll go deal with this. So I'm a doctor. I stick my finger in people's butts and check out all sorts of weird shit. I'm like, that's gross, Dad. He's like, exactly. And then there was another time, and I share this with you guys because this is what people do to be successful. We were opening up my first store, my first at 18, I had a Cutco. I was a manager. This homeless dude let his big German Shepherd take the world's grossest dump on the front. And I was like, I'm going to call the landlord. He's like, the landlord's not showing up, son. Go grab a bag, get a glove, picks it up, throws it away, scrubs the carpet. Had some crappy ass carpet in the front, scrubs it like spotless. And I'm like, so what won't you do? And he says, there's very few things I won't do because we got to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I got to take care of you guys. Like,
got to have that mentality when it's yours.
Well,
absolutely.
And what a lot of people, and I think you might, I'm sure your dad would resonate with this very well, but a lot of the old timers, that's just how it was.
Mm-hmm.
We have it different. Like we're sitting here talking on Zoom. Like I got a cell phone that's got more information than the entire Encyclopedia Britannica ever could.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But that's just all they knew. It was like, you didn't have so much stuff. So you took care of what you had.
Yeah. I think that, again, I mean, I've always been that person that talks about technology, and people say that, oh, this is going to destroy society. Well, how many things have come along over the years, and the society didn't get destroyed. They just adapted to it. Right. I think as we've reached newer technology these days, the adaptation period has been a little bit longer and the learning curve has been a little bit steeper.
Sure.
Because I think because we've never had technology of this caliber.
Right.
So we're still trying to get our hands around the fact that you and I might talk about something on this podcast, and then I go look at my phone and an ad's going to pop up for exactly what we
For
talked
sure.
about, because
Absolutely.
that's just how these things work. So
Home Depot and shovels.
yeah, it's crazy, but that's how I look at it. Is it's great to have it, but you have to have a filter, and you have to know how to still be responsible for how you use this technology, and don't let the consumption of crap on Facebook dictate your opinions and run your life. Some people let that happen and it just spirals out of control. It's crazy.
You know, I am quite passionate about things in life, and a lot of people that follow me or have unfollowed me or like me know that I'm passionate. So if there's something I like, people know. I don't shun behind it. I'm not scared behind it. But I have noticed that even though I'm passionate about certain things and I want to get the word out there, I have to do it in a way that my mental health is not affected.
Yeah.
Because I am, at the end of the day, responsible for myself and my team of 4 people that work for me to make sure that my bills are paid and their bills are paid. You know, yesterday we had a payroll issue, and the payroll issue is affecting them because the company we were using to pay them changed their policy. So from 2 weeks ago to today, they are now changing the way that money is transferred. And they're all overseas for the most part. And so the way that they accept money changed. So yesterday we're scrambling, trying to figure out late at night how to get me to transfer money. We, you know, and you try all the different things. And so then today in our morning stand-up meeting, my manager had to say, hey, and by the way, I know you guys didn't wake up to an account full of money, but you know, we're going to get you paid. And being an entrepreneur never stops, right? When you own your own business, it never stops. You can't say, you know, like your dad kicking the bed, my dad scrubbing stuff. You can't say, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm just going to lay here.
Right.
You know, people say
about that.
Yeah. And people are like, why do you get up so early? I have to. I made a choice to take a life that is more rewarding, but there's also a greater responsibility. You know, I don't feel like people, I feel like it's always been the same, but I feel like now with bigger corporations, people have the ability to work for these companies and make really cushy pays, and they don't have to take on the responsibility that our grandparents had. Like, it was just different. Like, it's just different. And so there's a lot of crazy things out there that come with responsibility and that come with being an entrepreneur, right? Like, and I'm not talking about a Bitcoin entrepreneur. I'm not talking about the entrepreneur who has created businesses online that has never had like the, you know, the customer kind of interaction like you have had. And don't get me wrong, those are fabulous, valid, awesome businesses. They're just different levels of stress.
Sure.
So you became an entrepreneur, I would say somewhat by accident, although you were planning for it. And
sounds about right.
And what happened? So, like, without going too deep in it, but share what happened. Because when I read that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, he gets it. Like,
Yeah.
You wake up one day, everything's great, and then what?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a lot of the different businesses that I had tried along the way, I did a couple network marketing deals and started a couple things of my own, and things didn't really pan. I learned that network marketing just wasn't for me. That's just not my style. So I was able to get out of that and pivot to things that did work. And me and my friend did a couple. We did a social media marketing company, things like that.
Okay.
Like, I mean, so that was going on, but while that was happening, I was still working at full-time jobs, and the job that I had, I felt was going really well. I really did enjoy the people I worked with. I enjoyed the company. It was just a good environment. I was happy. I was making good money, and I felt like this would be a good place to be. But in my mind, I still felt like, okay, I'm still going to try to build my own thing. If I get to a point where I can say I can work at my own thing comfortably, I will exit this company the right way. I will not just put in 2 weeks. I will help them plan, like, let's find my replacement. Let me help them get ready for this. Like, I won't leave until they're ready. I'll do this without pay. This is how I had it in my head, because I
Okay.
felt they had been so good to me that
Wow.
this was how I would pay them back. I wouldn't just leave them hanging and say, well, here's my 2 weeks. Good luck. Like, I would really
Wow.
leave them in a good place.
It's gonna, you guys are gonna understand why I'm saying wow in a second.
Yeah. So in all, in all of that happening, I had started my own little thing on the side, and I had some ideas on monetizing, and I knew it was going to take me some time, but I at least had the framework underway. Things
Right.
were up and running. I'd started making connections, so on and so forth. I had interviewed for a regional management position with this company. I didn't get the job, but I was told by the person that didn't hire me why. But he said, I'm going to tell you, it wasn't because of your interview, and it isn't because of you. We feel like you are going to be a major part of this. And we have some plans that in the meantime, we do want to give you more responsibility. And I was like, awesome. Whatever it's going to help out, I'm happy to do it. And in not even related to that, I had also helped with first week orientation for new managers that were joining the company. They would send them to my office for the week, and I would show them the ropes of just some of the basic operations from day to day. And that was how they would start their time with the company. So in my mind, everything was great. And then one morning, the guy that said, we're going to give you more responsibility, walked in and fired me. No warning. No, hey, we got to have a talk. You're out. And I was just so stunned.
Right.
That, I mean, there were so many things when I look back on that, and not now. I'm saying at first,
Right.
I'm done now. I mean, that, looking at where I'm at now, I'm happy it happened because things all came together nicely. But when I was home, I was like, son of a bitch, I should have said that. I should have said this. But I was just so shocked by what was happening. And I found out later that I had a couple people that threw me under the bus, and that was that. I'm like, all right, this seems really, really odd, because I had just gone through this 6 or 7 month period of hell with my sales consultant, who was trying to do everything she possibly could to sabotage me and get me in trouble and get me fired, to where I finally was able to prove that she was the one that was actually poisoning the office.
Right.
And it was ridiculous. And then she didn't even get fired. She ended up quitting a week I went on vacation. She just came in and put a note down and left. And I had already prepared everything. I said, listen, this is probably going to happen.
Right.
I'm not stupid. Just be ready for this. And it's exactly what happened. But long story short, or short story long, depending on how you're looking at this, it was nuts. It was crazy to me. And I just came home and sat here for a while, like recovering from this kick to the teeth that I just took.
Right.
And then there's a bar down the street from my house. I was like, well, I'm going to go down there for a while.
May as well.
And I did. So I went to the bar down the street from my house, and they had a bunch of Trogs Mad Elf, which is a Christmas beer that's like 11%.
Oh boy.
Had several of those. Came home, went to bed, woke up the next morning and just said, you know what? There's two options here.
Right.
Either I can update my resume and then start looking for another job where bullshit like that could happen again, or I can just say, I'm going to take all these years of experience and pour it all into building my own business and betting on myself, being self-supportive. And I said, the latter sounds way better right now. And that day I got to work, and I just started pounding every day, trying to figure out the best way to grow. And I will say that, I mean, it wasn't a smooth linear path. That this isn't like one of those, that isn't like the happy fairy tale ending. No, it was a lot of work.
I don't think there are any of those.
No, there's not. Some people
I haven't found one. I haven't found
Yeah.
one from any of the entrepreneurs or successful people that have done it in whatever channel they've done it. I've never met anybody who had it easy, unless they were born rich, and even they don't have it easy.
No, I would rather have it this way. What am I going to learn from it being easy?
Right.
Give me a challenge. Give me something that lets me test my own creativity and find ways to apply solutions to a problem. If the answer is just given to you, it's like, this is boring. And some people can live that way. I can't live that way. That's not for me. So that was it. I mean, like I said, I was very taken back by what happened. And, like they never knew that was my mindset of, well, yeah, I'll leave you people in the right place and we'll do this the right way, because it never got to that.
Never
So,
mattered.
and no, so whatever, like I said, I look back now, and I will say for a couple of years, I did harbor some resentment. I was
Sure,
very
sure.
angry.
Yeah. Well, when you go from making like almost 100,000 plus bucks a year,
Yeah.
and you're on a trajectory to make more money,
Yeah.
and in your mind, it's like, hey, I'm in it for a while. Like I'm not in it for the long run forever, but I'm not in it to quit either in the moment.
Right.
And all of a sudden you get kicked, square left, square right. And then as you're going down, they sucker punch you in the back of the head with a beer bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a blow. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a similar experience. I think a lot of people who decide to get into a business and become a small business owner, whether it be an online or whether it be a brick and mortar, or they decide to sell real estate or loans, or they, cars or whatever it is, there's a moment in time where they got fired. There's a moment in time where they saw somebody get fired, right? Like you see somebody get fired and you say, wait a minute, that could be me. Like, what's the difference between that guy and me? The name on the plaque. Right.
Yeah.
And so they wake up, there's opportunity that comes. Like I know a few people that I met in the Seattle days when I sold real estate. And I said, hey, you guys are buying these like $2, $3, $4 million houses, and you guys are saying you can pay cash. Like, like, how do you do this? And they're like, well, we have great options from the companies we worked with that we cashed out on before we left. But we learned a lot and we knew our niche, like we knew what we were good at. And we took the learning and we finally said, like, we got to open up our own business. Like we know what we're creating the product and service for Microsoft or Google or, Facebook. Why don't we just make our own? And guess who they sold it to? Microsoft, Google, and Facebook.
Sure.
So they left the company and they ended up selling it to them, right? They sell the service and the products to them. And I'm like, doesn't that go against the grain? And they're like, no, not at all. Like they need it. They didn't have the resources available to give us. So we left, we started it. We knew what they needed. So we solved the problem. We patched their hole. And sure, we made a lot of money. We might've made 5 million between our company, but they're going to make 100 million. So you think they care about the 5 because they needed our solution.
Right. And that's where I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't, well, I shouldn't, let me backtrack how I say this. I think to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to identify that problem and not get wrapped up in a certain product or a certain direction or a certain way of doing things.
Right.
Identify a problem and then find the best way to solve that problem. Give a solution that anybody would be willing to give you money for. It's pretty simple when you think about it.
There's a couple of reasons why I think people go into business for themselves. One is because of what happened to you, right? You had no choice. Well, you had a choice. You could, spruce up the resume, dust it off, get the cobwebs off of it and start passing out to people. But what went through your mind was, I could do that, but what if 9 months down the road, 3 years down the road, right now I'm making double the money, living in a different style of life, and they decide to cut me for no reason.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, everything that's golden is now a big frown.
Yeah.
At least if you go in business, I was with a friend and she says, I want to start my own business. And she says, what do you mean? She says, well, I want to start my own business. I said, you just told me how stressed out you were working a 9 to 5. She says, yeah, but that's for somebody else. If I start my own business, I might work as much as you do, Vikram, or as much as Jason does, or as much as any entrepreneur who knows what it's like to stay up late to get the project done for the client that sent it to them 44 hours later than they were supposed to. And she goes, but I'm doing it for myself. There's a pride and a joy when you do it. even if you make less money, even if you have to change your lifestyle, there's a pride and joy that some people have and some people don't. And there's nothing wrong with it if you don't have it. If you're listening to this, you're like, no, I'm cool working for a company. Like, dude, we need you. Like,
Yeah,
we need you.
absolutely.
But there are some people that just derive a certain pleasure from working on their own stuff. And when I talked to you the first time when I interviewed you to do some work for us, I was like, why do you do it? And you got excited. You're like, I like your content. Like, I listen to your podcast. Like, I like your content. Whereas the other people were like, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They didn't have that excitement in them.
Yeah.
So why do you love what you do? Like, so tell us what you do, and then why do you love what you do? And how did you fall into this? Like, you said you always knew that this was kind of down your path.
Yeah.
But tell us what you do and, a little bit more.
Sure. I do. I have myself labeled as a podcast communications consultant. So I help with all manner of communications because I feel that podcasters sometimes lack this in how they communicate with guests, how they communicate with their audience. And another part of that, another element of that is how I help people get booked on other shows and how they can be a guest on other podcasts and utilize that method to grow their brand. So
Right.
In essence, I'm their communications specialist handling all of that for them because they say, I don't have time for this. Find me good shows, talk to them, get me booked. I'll go do the interview and knock it out of the park. Absolutely. I'm glad to do that. But in regards to podcasting, I did a radio show back in college. I mean, that was many years ago. That was, let me think. 1999, I think, was when I first went on the air doing that first. And then after college, I lost track of it a little bit. And then 2015, my friend and I started a podcast. And at that point, podcasting was really
in 2015.
Yeah, that was when we did our first show. And that really, wow. I knew that podcasting was up and coming. I felt that, well, yeah, I loved radio when I was in college. This is going to be a natural transition. And I quickly learned that it wasn't. And I also learned that I still had a lot to learn. So me and my friend had a podcast. It didn't really go so well. A couple of years later, I decided to pull the plug and just take some time away to study podcasting and actually learn how this industry works and how this platform works.
Okay.
So I didn't produce any content. I just listened to other podcasts.
Okay.
In addition, I would listen to people on the radio. I would listen to people on television. It was, how are they delivering their content? How are they speaking to the audience? I wanted to get that skill set down before I ever thought about turning the microphone on again.
Okay.
So once I felt I was in a good spot, I put out a much better podcast.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was working in the beer industry. I had a podcast. I was doing some other things in that industry.
What was your podcast on?
I covered the business side of the beer business. So I would be bringing on different professionals. We weren't just talking about how good a beer was. We were talking about the sales process, marketing, talking about how they actually operate their tap rooms and attract customers, things like that. I felt like that was a piece that was missing. I mean, there are some podcasts out there like that, but there are definitely more podcasts where people just bring 3 beers on there and drink them and say, oh, this is great. And this is why it's great. Like I was like, I don't want to get into that. So it was coming up on 2020. And every year what I do, and I've been doing this since I started doing my own business, is towards the end of each calendar year, I will go to some secluded place with just me and a notebook, whether it's the library, whether it's a coffee shop off in the corner somewhere, just me and my notebook. And I start reflecting on the year and looking at how things are going. And okay, how can I carry a lot of this over to 2021? Or I'm sorry, carry this over to the next year.
Right.
How can I make, where can I make improvements? Where can I stay the course? So on and so forth. And going into 2020, the question I asked myself was, okay, things are going well, but can you continue to do this when you're 65?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, and I asked myself that, and I thought about it long and hard. I'm like, you know what? Probably not. This is not going to be, I can't see myself doing this when I'm 65. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to rock the boat because things are trending in a good direction. And then we get into 2020. My first quarter was my best quarter that I ever had financially. for my business. It's like,
Huh.
awesome. And then we all know what happened in March of 2020.
March of 2020 was awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah, fantastic. So that was
free vacation for all.
Yeah, right. Free vacation. That's a good way to.
Unless you work at the Amazon distribution center, and then you got to go to work.
Or work with breweries who are selling to bars that are all now closed.
Yeah.
Which is what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
So pretty much everybody I was working with was ready to let go of me, not because they wanted to, it was because what was I going to do? And so I came up with a creative way to keep working with them, which put me in a really difficult spot, but I basically became a delivery guy for everything I sold. And I'm driving this little Nissan Altima, hauling beer around, and
Jeez.
So long story short, as I was looking, I was like, I can't keep doing this forever either. And I've got
so another entrepreneurial hardship.
Yeah. So I've had that along with the podcasting stuff that I was doing. I was working with one client in regards to building his podcast.
Okay.
And I started looking at that a little bit closer, saying, I think this is the direction. I've been podcasting for 6 years now. I've been working with this client and putting his show together. There are probably other people just like him that would need these types of services. There's got to be somebody that's looking to build a podcast, but isn't sure where to start or doesn't know anything about production. What can I do to help that person? And then as I started shifting that way, I knew I was right because I started getting people coming to me, and one thing led to another. And now I'm doing that full time. And here we are. And that led me to you. We ended up connecting on Clubhouse for the first time.
Yep. You're hosting a room on Clubhouse.
Yeah. And I'm happy as hell to be in this business because I love podcasting. I love getting on a microphone, talking with other hosts. I love doing my own show and talking to people. Ultimately, the goal is to produce great content that people can consume and have their life impacted in one way, shape, or form, whether it's profound, whether it's just pure entertainment, whatever it may be. If you're hitting somebody in the feels, you did a good job. And I love that element of it. So that's why I'm here. And that's why I love coming to work every day.
You know, people ask me, they're like, dude, your podcast, you're growing a podcast, you're doing another business with your brother, you have your coaching and consulting business. Like, isn't that a lot? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, it is. It is a lot. I'm like, if I were to be focused on one thing, it would be a lot easier. I said, but the podcast I enjoy because I get to talk to cool people and have fun stories. And it makes me realize like, hey, they've been through some hard things. I've been through some hard things. They're doing great. I can do great. I can do better. I can do more. I can do this. I can do that. Like, oh my God, they run this. How many companies? Like you're 70 years old and you have 14 companies. Oh my God. Like there's so much more opportunity for me to expand my mind. Mm-hmm. Like I get excited and motivated and you'll hear some of the recordings that are coming your way and you're like, oh my God, this is crazy awesome.
Absolutely.
And you hear the hardships that these people have gone through, right? You hear where they grew up. Like I grew up with a family with heroin addicts, right? Like I was abused. I was this, I was that. And I'm like, whoa, like my childhood, was nowhere near that bad. Right? My childhood was like so different. Like my childhood was so this, my, opportunity was so different. And it's wild to think about what we have and how we look at the world. Like we live in America, the most free country in the world. Even still today with being shut down, we get to do, if you live in the right places, whatever you want. Mm-hmm. Like you get to share and live online freely all day, every day. Like there is so much opportunity in this country for people that just get up off their ass and stop being lazy. Right. Like you said earlier, I got to get up, bro. Like my dad kicked the bed and I got to get up. Like when you have deadlines, you got to get up. And for you, I think there's an innate value that you got because when you got kicked out of when you got kicked out of company, that was like your dad kicking you out of bed saying you can't make something happen laying down. And I think a lot of people that have that spirit inside of them, you get comfortable. right? You start making 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50, 60, 70, 80. There's a movie, and I've quoted it before, and I should probably figure out who is actually saying it, but it's a guy that you would recognize. He's wearing a gray suit with this younger woman in a boardroom, and there's a guy across the table, and he would fly across the country firing people for the companies that didn't have the courage to fire their own employees. And he said, the guy said, you know, I have to let you go, and I'm sorry. And the lady says, oh, it's like, so she said something stupid because she was brand new. And then the other guy, I think it was Harrison Ford. So then Harrison Ford said something like, how much did they pay you initially to let go of your dream of having your own restaurant and being a world-class chef? And it's like 45,000. He's like, well, I make 100. He said, no. How much did they initially pay you to let go of your dream and come work in an office versus working in a kitchen, which is what you wanted? He goes, it was like 40,000, 30,000.
Yeah, it's very true.
And even if you make less money as a person doing your own thing, it's your own thing. Like the pride that you get from doing your own thing, I think is immensely irreplaceable.
I could not agree more. I feel that you can make some great accomplishments when no matter where you're working. And if you do, again, I think we go back to what you were saying before. Like if this is the life that you want to lead and you want to work for a company, that's fantastic. Because absolutely,
Awesome.
we all need that. And you can accomplish some great things.
Yes.
I always looked at that was, you know, at the end of the day, if I'm putting
Yes.
this little plaque on my desk, it was still for somebody else.
Right.
It's not for me. And this is personally, I don't need to have the little plaque. So I think that speaks more to the entrepreneurial spirit, because
Right.
you're not going to get the pat on the back from the big guy up in the big office.
There is no
because
big
there
guy.
isn't that guy. Right. It's you. Like you could just, you know,
the big, the little, the small, the left, the right, the HR, the accounting.
Yeah. And I mean, with a podcast that does a lot for inspiration, like I've told you before, there's been a couple of your episodes that I've edited that I got done. I'm like, I just want to go run through the wall right now. That pumped me up so much because the conversation was so freaking good. To me, that's what it's all about. And as an entrepreneur, if you're doing something that's trying to provide value to the world, whether it's start a podcast, being a guest on a podcast, whatever you do, if you can go to bed at night having impacted one person,
right,
and make whether it was they just said, reached out to you and said, man, I love what you do. Keep doing it. Thank you. You really provide something great for me. Or it's just somebody saying that was a really good episode.
Right.
One way or another, depending on the level of compliment, you're still getting a compliment. You impacted that person. You played a role in making their life better that day. You can go to bed happy.
Yeah.
I think, you know, and being in the podcasting game and talking to podcasters, a lot of people get hung up on download numbers and all these vanity metrics and likes and comments. And look, engagement's great. Getting massive downloads is great, but it's not the be all end all. It doesn't mean your podcast is horrible if it doesn't have massive downloads. People get hung up on that and they lose track of the fact that if one person in that whole crop has a different outlook on what they're doing because of what you said, you kicked some ass that day. You made a serious impact.
Yeah.
And I think that keeps you motivated, because if I can impact one person a day and keep coming back and doing that every day, yep, that's going to get me out of bed and get me working. Absolutely.
You know, and I love that perspective, Bud, because there are times, because, you know, I might have a small ego that I've been told about. I haven't met this ego, but other people surely have. And there are times where I'm like, WTF. You look at your neighbor who's got 10 deals on the board. You look at your other neighbor, 10 deals on the board. Look at the neighbor, 20 deals on the board. You're like, oh, they got a 6. But then you don't look at the neighbor that's got 0 for the last 3 years. You only look at the people that are doing better than you, right? Because we tend to compare up and praise up versus the way that we should do
human
it,
nature. Keeping up with the Joneses is as old as gravity.
And so you're comparing yourself to all these people, but remember, those people started somewhere too. Like you don't know how they started. You don't know why they have more downloads than you, right? Most people don't do the studying. Like I don't listen to a lot of other podcasts to study. I listen to the podcasts that I enjoy, right? And And what happens with people that have been kicked a couple of times really hard, especially in a small period of time, is that your ability to suffer goes up. Your ability to persevere goes up. Your ability to be resilient goes up. And so when you get kicked, right, that's why it's so great for kids to go through a little bit of hardship at a young age. Because when that kid goes through some hardship and comes out, one, they like, oh, we didn't die. The fear goes, like, one of the big thing that stops people is fear. They don't have that fear factor. Like, I can do hard stuff. 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 And they start pounding their chest. And then it's like, let me help you. You're like, no, I got it.
Yep.
So you get this confidence factor, this resilience factor, right? The one is resilience, and two is the confidence. Like when you do something tough, or when you get kicked and you get up and you show up, right? This is one of the reasons why I liked you, is that you continuously show up, but you say my mindset's like a 9. And I'm like, that's awesome. Because I don't know any entrepreneur, any solopreneur, any real estate investor, any mogul, any whatever the fudge you want to call yourself, that said their life was easy.
Right.
And they all talk about like that rock bottom moment, right? Or the lowest moment of their life. And then they talk about like 5 more moments, which were super low.
Yeah. Rock bottom, 50 feet of crap. Then the next moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. No,
Never say
no, I always look. Well, no, I mean, I don't know if I guess in regards to a career, that was rock bottom for me, was hitting that, having that job taken from me that I was really enjoying. But I think that overall, I think you mentioned the fact that like you build that confidence at an early age, and you start to, well, here, I'm editing this so I can stop. What's going on? What happened?
Bandwidth. Yeah. So you're freezing.
Me? This to me, talking about the resilience and confidence, to me, I think you talk about sports and how that can build these things up in you. And when do we typically start playing sports? At a young age. So we start learning these things that are valuable, and they carry us through life. And as you start to realize the connection of confidence in how you talk to the opposite sex, or confidence in how you approach a test that you need to take in school, and then how you go into your job interviews, and all of these things, that confidence. And then when something bad happens, having the resilience to bounce back.
Right.
These are all things that we start learning. Like I started playing baseball when I was 7 years old. I started golfing when I was 7 years old. These are all I don't play baseball anymore, but I still golf. So you can understand my frustration when I go to my daughter's soccer game and I hear they don't keep score.
What?
Yeah. And this was a few years back. She doesn't play soccer anymore. She's swimming now. And I like that because she enjoys it, and they're still tracking time.
Do they not track? Matters. Do they not track laps and time either?
No, they still do that. That's why I don't mind her being in swimming whatsoever. They don't keep scoring. Like, how are these kids going to learn when a win is good and a loss is bad, and how to bounce back from that? Because now they're just running around in a circle kicking a ball. There's nothing. There's no objective here. You
know why? It's because the people that are making the rules didn't get picked because of whatever reason, but they never had the resilience to bounce back. And so instead of saying, hey, let's make these kids stronger than what we were, they make them weaker, because they don't want the kids to have that feeling of ouch.
Yeah. Well, here's a perfect story to speak to that. When I was a kid, I think I was like a freshman in high school, and I went to the Y with one of my friends, and he was on the basketball team, and we ended up hooking up with a couple other people that were playing that were on the basketball team. Now, I was not on the basketball team. At that point, I wasn't good at basketball at all.
Yeah.
But I said I would go.
I was a bench warmer.
I pretty much was getting made fun of the whole time.
Yeah.
You know how I responded to that? I said, fuck that. I'm going to just start getting better at basketball. Every day after school, there was a hoop down the street from my house. I would go shoot around, work on dribbling, shoot free throws. I took it upon myself to say, whether I play basketball with those guys ever again, I'm never going to let that happen to me again.
Right.
And I think more times than not, the reaction to that is, well, I'm just never going to go play basketball again.
Right.
I was like, well, I like this. I might not be good at it, but I'm going to get better at it.
Right.
And that's how I think anybody needs to respond to any bad situation. It's just, we get that mental block that tells us that we can't.
Right.
And it leads to some of the problems that we face today. It's craziness.
You know, there's a commercial, a car commercial, and it's probably got a lot of heat, but the end of the little boys going or little girls going to soccer, and it's a participation award.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes into his car. I think it was a Volkswagen. He goes into his car and grabs a Sharpie, crosses out and says first place.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah.
When we talk about winning and losing, it's important to feel what it's like to lose. It's important to feel what it's like to get your face kicked in a little bit. Like, it's important to get hit in life. Like, as a human, you should know what it feels like to get physically hit and do martial arts, so that you have that respect for your body. Like, okay, like there's things in life that you just have to respect. And there's things in life which you have to take seriously. Work ethic and resilience and confidence are all part of the game. Like, the game of success it's not easy, but it's fun.
Damn
right?
right.
Like I got for those of you who don't see, I was like, I got 2 bikes in I just moved to Miami. So I'm in a temporary place right now, and I'm doing some stuff. And so until I get my new place, I got both my bikes like sitting to my left. And this morning I'm like, it fires me up to look back and see that bike. One, I know how much it cost, right? So I'm like, it motivates me because I'm like, I want to buy more toys for it. And I'm like, I told myself I'm not buying more toys until I buy a hyperbaric chamber. And that costs a lot of money too. Like, that's more than the bike. And I was like, but that's for my health and long term. And right, it's the level of preparation that you put into life is the level of success that comes out of life. And people don't want to prepare. And if you don't keep score, you don't have to really go home and prepare. Right. If there's no win and loss, you don't have to keep score. But in the real world, there's a shitload of loss. There's a lot of loss. And as our population expands, there are more opportunities, but there's also more people going into certain things. And, I was watching this thing on TV where the kids were so stressed about college. And I was like, that commercial, how do they manage that stress when they've never had to deal with it? And then as you get older, of course, you're never going to be an entrepreneur because you were bred to be an employee. So even if you had that entrepreneurial spirit, it's like crushed into you. It's like blown away, and it's a disservice. And so I'm glad that you took she took herself out of soccer and went to something like swimming. Hopefully the same people that run the soccer don't run the swimming, because if the little kid goes underneath the water and doesn't come up, they're going to be like, well, they've been there for just a few minutes. I'm sure they'll be fine. Like, they're blue. The water's blue. Like, come on, people. Like,
I just don't know how you can appreciate how good a win feels if you've never experienced a loss.
Right.
There's just no way to make the connection. Look at, like, the one I look at, and this is something, I mean, my dad talked about this. He's a big Buffalo Bills fan.
Okay. And
last year they lost the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship. And they showed Stephon Diggs standing on the field watching the Chiefs celebrate. And then they did this close up. I remember texting my dad. I go, that mofo is going to kill it next year. That look of determination on his face, because he's watching like, I'm not getting this. I should be getting this, and I'm going to have to work harder to get it.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is going to go crazy on the field.
Yeah.
That's the type of work ethic that everyone should look at. Like, that's a prime example.
Look, we have every resource available to us. I call it resilience. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and when I did the project earlier this year, I had a fractured toe, and I don't need sympathy from people, but I had a fractured big toe. Like, it's kind of important to walk. And when you're doing something like the project, which is a 75-hour suffer fest where you're hiking and walking and lifting and crawling, and you're on your feet literally the whole time. It's basically like 3-day boot camp, not as hard as the boot camp, but pretty hard because we're not also in our 19s and 20-year-old prime shape.
Right.
I had a fractured toe. And I remember one of the instructors calling me, Instructor Steve, and he said, "You're strong enough. It's not broken. It's going to hurt. You're going to suffer, but you're going to suffer anyways. So just get the fuck down here and we'll figure it out." He says, "If you can't do it, then you can't do it, but get prepared." And I said, "Well, I can't run right now. My foot's literally swollen." I said, "I can't run." He says, "You got access to a robot?" He said, "What do you have?" I said, that was a good question. "What do you have access to? A bike, an assault bike, a rower?" "Oh, you got those two things?" "Yeah." Back and forth. Boom, 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 boom. Said, "Okay." He said, "Better cardio than bike running." I said, "Really?" He said, "Keep working out. Do what you can. We'll get you down here. Do what you can. If we got to tape you up, there's a medic." He says, "If we got to roll you to the next class, we'll roll you, but you're ready." And I think that's an important statement that I remember, is that he said, "You're ready." And I think when your dad kicked your bed and said, "Why aren't you going to work?" It's kind of like, "Hey, you're ready to work. Why aren't you working?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's little things that language does to us. And it's what you're doing with your daughter. I don't know like exactly what you say to your daughter, but you're teaching her to be able to take suffering. And COVID for a lot of kids is going to be the greatest thing ever because they suffered so much.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot more kids, it's going to be a victim. But for a small percentage of people, it's going to be the greatest year of their life because they're going to be victors. And they're gonna be like, dude, like you, like, dude, 2020 rocked my world, started my business. Now I'm living my dream life and I get to do what I love because I'm helping get messages out to people.
Amen. Could not agree more.
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Favorite book?
The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
Yes. Yes. I think you might be the first person to say that.
Yeah.
I think you are.
Book.
This is like this will probably, by the time it comes out, will be episode 50 or 47 or 8 or 9. It's going to be up there in the episodes. I think you're the first person. So the biggest takeaway from the Slight Edge from you.
What I learned there was it's a very simple principle when you think about it, but the actions that you take each and every day, whether they're good or bad, are going to get you to the place that you're headed.
Right.
If you're doing a bunch of little things every day,
right,
you don't see the results the next day or maybe the next day or even the day after that. But the more you keep doing them, the closer you're getting to having a real tangible result.
Yes.
And the exact opposite of that is if you don't do those actions, you start going backwards and you get to that place you're headed. That hit me. I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. And when you really think about it, it's very simple.
Yeah.
And I think we overcomplicate things with excuses and we let it block our path to getting to a level of success that's good for us or for me. Yes. Everybody's got their own definition of success. And to me, if I'm not taking those little actions every day to get a little bit better, get 1% better at my craft, get 1% better at life, I'm failing. And I have an example to set. I have a daughter. I have someone that looks up to me. I don't want her to see some guy just sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Yeah. No, kudos, dude.
Thanks, brother.
There's a graph on page like 29 or something. And there's a line where there's a line that goes out to the right and then it curves up.
Yeah.
And then there's another line right below it that goes out to the right and it curves down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly what you said. Little things that are hard today become easy tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And little things that are hard that are easy today become hard tomorrow. And it's, I use the analogy always with exercise. It's hard to start to exercise today, but when you're 65 years old and you're healthy and you're running and you're golfing and you're cycling, you're excited because you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. If you eat the cheeseburger and the French fries and the processed foods today, when you're 65, you're going to be suffering because you're not going to have the health to do the things you want. Yeah. So I love it. You guys, a Slide Edge, Jeff Olson, pick it up. It's a very quick, easy, like third grade level book, which is probably why I like it. But the fantastic message, as Jason shared, is in there. And what do you want people to remember you as in life? What's your tombstone message?
For me, I would say that I would like people to look back and say that this guy got up and did his part every day to make a difference. And that may sound a little bit trite. It may sound a little bit cliche, but I think looking back on it, again, making a difference doesn't mean that you have to change the world.
Right.
To me, making a difference and making an impact is changing one person's viewpoint on one little thing.
Right.
In podcasting, I like to preach the world of niche or the world of niche, no matter however you want to say it. That's still up for debate how you actually say that word, but
I don't know.
With podcasting, the more niche your podcast is, the more of a chance you have to resonate with a bigger audience.
Right.
I think some people believe that they have to have a podcast that serves all masters because then they're going to get a million different listeners coming from everywhere. And that's just not the case.
No.
Focus in on one thing that you're passionate about and keep getting better at that every day. Keep learning more about that every day. Keep building your message around that every day. Right. And that's how you'll make an impact. Absolutely. And sometimes that can be a little bit more of a slow burn, but the way I see it is I've got time. I'm going to keep working every day. And until something comes along that says I don't,
right,
I'm going to have time. This countdown to the end has been going since my first breath. So I'm going to keep running with it until that countdown runs out.
And we don't know. All
That's
we
right.
know is what we're doing. Jason, it's been a pleasure. Where can people find you?
JasonCercone.com is the place to visit. You can connect to my podcast. You can hook up with me for a quick conversation through consultation, or if you want to be on my podcast, you can apply there and we'll get you on the show and have something fun to talk about, hopefully. So I should say, just not to throw a quick plug out there, but
plug yourself.
I do have an existing show that's called Pod Theory. So if we've got any podcasters listening that offers tips, strategies, and commentary about podcasting, and I have a new show coming out in the fall of 2021 called Evolution of Brand, where I'm looking forward to speaking with entrepreneurs like yourself, Vikram. Right. Would love to have you on the show, talking about their journey, how they've grown, how they've developed their own personal brand along with their own businesses, and then provide some actionable strategies that our listeners can take and apply to their businesses. Cannot wait to get that show going. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
I can't wait to be on it. It sounds like what I tell my team to find for me to all day long. I'm looking for more podcasts that align with me, not just from a business point, but also from like a energy standpoint with the host that I'd like to be a guest on. And so I'd love to be on it. And you guys, Jason's a super cool dude. He's super positive. He's got a lot of cool things that he's working on at all given times. And if you guys aren't connecting with Jason and taking advantage of the opportunity to connect with somebody who's all about marketing and getting the word out there, the spoken word, you're just doing yourself a disservice. And so get on his website, reach out to him. If he's on Clubhouse, he is on Clubhouse. And if he's doing a room, go check it out, because you might not have a podcast, but you talk. And you talk about your business, you talk about life, or you talk to clients, you talk to customers, you will pick up something valuable from his rooms. So if you find him online, go say what's up. But otherwise, Jason, thank you for your time, buddy. And I can't wait to get this out for the world to hear.
Thanks, Vikram. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Have a great day.
You too.